What's up, everyone? Welcome to Time Crunch. I am joined today all the way from Austin, Texas, by Michael Graham, one of four co-founders of Austin Beerworks, a great brewery in Austin, Texas. They opened in 2011, a very similar time frame to the brewery I work for, Revolution. And like Revolution, they were a big early champion of canned beer as their vessel of choice, which I think worked out well for both of us. Michael leads the sales and marketing efforts for the brewery. And I've always admired them from afar, but more recently, over like the last year or so, I started interacting more with their brewery's Twitter account, which then led me to Michael's personal account, which I kind of get a daily dose of both. And Michael, you don't have to say it, I'm going to say it for you, but I do think you guys run the best brewery Twitter account in the country that I've ever come across. So
that's a low bar, but thank you very much. I appreciate it. We have fun with it.
Very well done. So, there's a ton of things I'd love to talk to you about in the future, but I thought today a fun topic to break things up would be talking about beer Twitter. So thanks for coming on.
Big conversation, yeah.
How you guys holding up?
Oh gosh, it's hard to say good because everything's bad, but it's all relative. And really, I feel like we're doing as well or better than almost anybody else that I've talked to. Just by dumb luck of the way that we're set up, that we self-distribute 100%. So there's no logistical issues with wholesalers. We're still just dealing directly with all of our off-premise retail accounts. On-premises is pretty much gone, but all the off-premises locations have been great to work with. And then Texas was late to the game, but last September breweries got the ability to sell beer to go. Yep. And that's been a huge lifeline for us. So even though our tap room sort of is shut down, the beer to go is still flowing, and people have been super supportive over that. So between those two things, there's a semblance of normal and just sort of a general feeling if things sort of stay how they are now, which I don't know. I don't know if I'm an optimist or a pessimist. Depends on I try to be in business, I'm a pessimist and try to expect the worst, or at least plan for the worst. But if things stay semi even to where they are now, I think that we'll survive and see what things look like on the other side. Well, but awesome. I'm just happy to be where we are now, and that we have kept pretty much everybody on payroll and kept everybody's health insurance and all that stuff, and better than most.
That's great to hear. Congrats on all that. It's just a daily emotional roller coaster of challenges, and then all these silver linings, and just people doing awesome things amidst all of this. That's just got you emotions all over the place, because it's harder than it's ever been, but there's so many great things being done and being come up with on the fly that's great to see as well. So, well, let's turn it over to the topic of the day, beer Twitter. Wanted to see if you could kick things off by, pretend we're talking to somebody who is into beer, beer enthusiast, but maybe Instagram or Facebook is their, social medium of choice, or how would you explain to them what beer Twitter is and what it's like?
Oh man, that's a broad conversation. And it's a term I wasn't even really familiar with until fairly recently. I don't know. Overall, I guess it's really anybody talking about beer on Twitter is where I would, the borders of the universe are. But I think beer Twitter has its own meaning for people inside of that circle. I guess if beer Twitter overall is like a high school, I feel like there's different cliques, and beer Twitter is one of those weird cliques, like a bunch of misfit Breakfast Club people in detention hanging out together. It's a strange subsection of Twitter, but it seems like it's filled with a lot of industry professionals, some just general beer fans, a lot of writers. I don't know. It's just a weird crisscross of active people who seem to have strong opinions about beer and that can't shut up about it.
Yeah, I like the high school cliques analogy. An analogy I use sometimes is like the WWE, where someone might post something that's the equivalent of a wrestler coming out to the ring and grabbing the microphone and making some outlandish claim, and then someone else's entrance music hits, and then more wrestlers come into the ring, and then a brawl breaks out. There
That's
can be,
very apt.
and
Yeah.
that's only one.
Yeah.
That's only one like thing, part of it. But
I think it's, yeah, Twitter's like that with just less scripting and production value. But yeah,
yeah.
I think a similar thing happens.
But like, what are some of the things that bring you to Twitter each day? What are you looking for when you pop in?
It's interesting. I really don't, or had not really social media much before kind of doing it through the company. So it's really started off as just a company account of just telling people about what's going on at the brewery or what releases we have coming out. Really is a promotional tool, and then kind of a marketing tool for advertising. But then you start interacting with people more on either on a one-on-one basis or having conversations. Or I found over the time too that that we have experience in the industry, and that and no, when I say I'm chiming as an authority, I think there's still people that know a lot more than I do about a lot of things, but just somebody with general experience that I like to chime in if somebody asks a question. Somebody just earlier was asking about best buy dates and, how a lot of kegs are going stale and what does that really mean? And why is it a 90-day freshness date on most craft beers? And, just being able to chime in and answer some industry questions that people have.
At what point would you say you started using Twitter for its own unique purpose versus just like a copy of what you were doing on, say, Facebook or something else and just posting the
Yeah,
same thing? Has it been like a while, or is it pretty new that you've been doing it?
That's a good question. I guess it just sort of evolved naturally, and I think it's more involved with just how people interact. I think people interact in a different way and ask different questions on Twitter versus Facebook or Instagram. Where Instagram is super content driven and it's all about just the images and everything. But Twitter is really about the sort of the message and the conversation. And I never set out with a plan of how to, that these are the Twitter guidelines of how we interact with people. It just really happens naturally, and that has evolved. And then I said I really don't do social media much personally, but Twitter is an exception where I had to break off and sort of create my own individual account, mainly to try to keep myself out of trouble with Austin Beerworks in general, because it's really hard to not say something sometime, whether it's through a company account or even a personal account. I still have to be careful and put some limits on, because I'm still attached to the brewery in some way. So
Yeah,
really
I've seen you flip sometimes in the
yeah,
conversation, and I get it. Some things
and that's
it doesn't make sense for a brewery to have an opinion on something or something like that. So
right.
even though it might
Yeah.
make total sense, you're like,
Yeah.
do the
And
same thing.
which I always have an opinion, but a lot of times I have to be aware that people don't want to hear opinions from a company account a lot of times.
Yeah. So how would you break down, going to Twitter for, like, how much of it would you say is going for information? And I guess this is more on the personal side, less on the brewery, like as the brewery posting to share what's new and what's coming out. But in terms of using it for yourself, like, I kind of think of it in two major buckets of going there for information and going there for entertainment. Is it a healthy mix of the two, or you skew more one versus the other?
It's both. It's definitely a mix. And I try intentionally to not make Twitter my only news source or my only,
Right.
I think it's very easy to, to get sucked into your echo chamber. And I intentionally try to follow and interact with people that I don't agree with, for better or worse, I guess. But, I try to get to avoid being inside of an echo chamber where I'm only sort of hearing the same story talked about in different ways, personally. But it is an amazing platform for access and communicating with people. The president is maybe a bad example, but theoretically you could have a direct conversation with the president or with the head of, I don't know. I think it's taken up everybody's feeds lately, but just COVID information and different studies coming from different places. And I don't know, it's in some ways an amazing platform for information sharing, but you have to be real, I think, careful and cautious about
I,
about how you use it.
I think you dropped a really good piece of advice there, and to go along with mentioning the president, I can't remember who, but I just remember during the last election, seeing so many people saying, if you think this, then I'm unfollowing you or something like that. And then I remember somebody else telling me or just posting somewhere that, if you unfollow everybody who you disagree with, then your opinions are going to become more and more one-sided themselves. And why not retain, to the extent you can tolerate them, people that think the opposite, just so that you understand more broadly how people think. And it just seems like a no-brainer, and that stuck with me. And that's something like even just applying to something like beer, like I'm not gonna not follow someone that just because I don't agree with them. I think
Yeah.
you can gain just as much by following people you disagree with.
Right.
And
I
sometimes
think,
realize that you're wrong. Sometimes I realize I'm wrong
yeah,
by following somebody I disagree with, and I realize they're right and I'm wrong.
yeah. And I try to limit that, not following somebody with a different worldview just for the sake of it. I like to follow interesting people that have a different perspective or worldview or set of beliefs, but that can
Yep.
sort of talk about them in a meaningful way to where I might not agree with them philosophically of how they ended up with their position, but at least I can respect their thought process for getting there. And I think that's healthy. But I also think I'm just, a lot of people, I'm just probably addicted to, I enjoy on some level of getting angry at people on the internet and arguing
Yeah.
a bit, which it's just a form of entertainment, I guess.
Yeah. Well, like I said, you do a great job with it. What are some of the accounts that or handles or people that kind of jump out at you as people that have kind of had a positive impact on you or taught you something, taught you to think differently, or just kind of keep you up to date on things?
Oh man, I should have prepared a list. I feel like I'll be
Sorry
leaving
for
people
springing
out.
it on you. That's all right.
Yeah, no,
I'll help you fill some in.
it's a great list, and it really is like in some ways I feel like I have a lot of friends, relationships and uh, just friendships that I've developed through that, you know, typing 280 characters at a time back and forth with people. And it's a great list of, industry people. And gosh, I'm hesitant to name people specifically just because I feel like I'm definitely leaving people out. But I don't know. Let's see, for industry specific stuff. Jeremy Danner was one of the first guys that I think in sort of inside that beer Twitter circle. And I don't know how he ended up in there. I'd count him in there, but I always thought he did a great job when he was at Boulevard of sort of being a brand ambassador, but as a personal sort of separate account. And but he's real knowledgeable and a great advocator for beer in general.
And I think what he did that was so special, especially like being kind of first, or at least in our industry, one of the first, was being responsive to fans. And
Yeah.
there was a good chance if you asked a reasonable question, he was going to answer you. And
Mm-hmm.
that was just like a neat way into the brewery that you wouldn't always get, especially in a decade ago. A lot of brewery accounts would get all these questions and just nobody would answer them. They would just sit
Right.
there unanswered. But he was someone you knew, if you were reasonable, like I said, he'd get back to you, and that was cool. And I think that's how he kind of built up the following and
Yeah.
reputation he did, by
And I
being
don't remember how, but
accessible. Yeah.
in my memory, that was like one of my first, I feel like one of my first interactions with real, with beer professionals on Twitter,
Mm-hmm.
separate from me just being a company account.
Yeah,
Trying to think of other,
Bart Watson's a good one for me, just given what
oh
I
yeah.
do. Like, he's just cranking out information that is very useful, and some of it's so broad that it's not necessarily something you can apply immediately to your job, but gives you a pulse of what's happening,
Yeah.
on
And
the
it's funny
country.
too. I was just sort of thinking about that. I feel like I know a lot of people's Twitter handles, and I don't know I think of them in their Twitter handle before I think of their real name of
Yeah.
who they actually are. But yeah, Bart's a great one for industry analysis, and he's just a funny guy. He's just a good guy to follow. I've been really enjoying, kind of heartbreaking, but following Libby from Second Shift Brewing. That she's just a sweetheart and a good person, and dealing with a lot of the same stuff that a lot of other people are doing. And she's been really open about it, and I think that's been good for me. I feel like it's just nice to have somebody speaking openly about what they're going through.
Yeah,
And
she does a great job of showing the support system that Twitter can be too when
mm-hmm.
you're struggling. And sure, you might get a couple jerks swooping in. That's always possible, but the positivity tends to outweigh it by a good bit. And she's a
Yeah.
great example of that.
but it's a, it's a really long list.
Yeah.
Which is great, and that's, I tweeted about earlier, but how bummed I am to not, for Craft Brewing Conference to be canceled this year. And I'm assuming Great American Beer Fest too. I mean, we'll see. It's hard to imagine any of those big gatherings, happening, but gosh, yeah, I just met so many interesting people that I really like talking to online that I was really looking forward to meeting people in person. I remember last year's GABF, you came up to our booth. That was the first time I,
Yeah.
met
I
you in
was like,
person,
Michael?
which is really cool. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it was really a really neat thing. No idea who you were or what you looked like until you
Yeah.
introduced yourself. Like, oh, of course, yeah. So it's a really cool thing to be able to put a face to to a conversation.
Yeah. The neat thing I think that's worth mentioning about Twitter is that, there's all these people out there that, doing interesting things that I don't follow or didn't realize I didn't follow, who the way the Twitter algorithm works, which is, again, this wouldn't happen on Facebook or Instagram, is based on some of the people you follow, they'll serve up some tweets here and there, especially ones that are like have some traction or got a lot of interaction. They'll serve you up some tweets from people you didn't follow, and then
Mm-hmm.
they kind of introduce you to people you might like. You might want nothing to do with them, but it's pretty smart. Like, it's not perfect.
Yeah.
Like, I'll get tweets of people who I don't follow who are tweeting because they broke up with their boyfriend or girlfriend or something like that, and I'm like, well, that didn't work. But that's how I've found half the people I follow and learn from, is just from the way they do that, which is, I think, unique to Twitter.
Yeah, and I've tried lately too. I mean, I feel like I'm a lurker more than a contributor. That I like to read through conversations and stuff. But yeah, lately I've been trying to chime in when I can if I have something to say, and just through that, yeah, I've been introduced to a lot more interesting people, and I feel like I don't know, it's a potentially an educational tool, and that's what I'm trying to use it for, is an actual, especially now that we really can't get together in person so much anymore. It's a great way to socialize in some ways, but also, I mean, it's a forum for sharing ideas and asking questions and sort of figuring things out. I think that everybody right now is pivoting to figuring things out and trying to find ways to adapt and exist in this sort of changed market. And I think Twitter's been a good resource for that, of helping us come with ideas or flesh ideas out, and just sort of using it as a tool more than just a a place to get into arguments.
And you posted a poll. I can't remember whether it was you or the company account, asking for opinions on hazy IPA to go prices.
Yeah.
And that was something you used for very practical reasons, right? That was unique,
Yeah.
and I thought that was cool.
Yeah. I think that's an example of how you can use it as a tool and actually get feedback and feedback that people appreciate to contributing. But yeah, that particular poll was, what do you feel the right price point is for this kind of beer? And the answers were really interesting. The reasons for people giving them were really interesting, and being able to engage with them and sort of say, well, this is why this range exists, or why we're thinking this price point versus this price point, and to be able to talk about everything that goes into making a beer, but then price point considerations beyond that, of just how you fit into the market and not wanting to undercut retailers or other breweries in your area, but also not wanting to gouge the consumer. And I mean, I don't know, it's rare that you get to have sort of a conversation as mundane with pricing with people, but framed in a certain way when you make a poll about it. It was, I don't know, it was really, I thought it was a good poll that ended up in a good place, and they had a lot of good conversations that helped us out, and I think helped our consumers out too, of understanding.
Yeah, and it was nice to see that not everybody, obviously there's industry people in here too who are on the front lines themselves, but it was nice to see, everybody didn't just pick the cheapest one because that's what they would want to pay,
Right. Yeah.
in terms of their wallet. But it seemed like that people looked at it objectively too, from what I saw from the results.
Yeah.
So
I'm glad it ended up where, I mean, I think the options I put were, I don't even remember, honestly. I think it was $10, $12, $15, $18 for a 4-pack of Tall Boys, and 15 was the sort of the winner.
That's what I voted for.
Good. And I'm totally happy with that. I'm really happy that one, and that's what we ended up. That's what we're charging for our 4-packs, and
yep.
I feel more justified in doing that now, which is nice.
Cool. Well, I know you said that you don't have like, like a document or something that like describes your brand voice on Twitter or anything like that. But I was curious, just in your own words, how you would describe the personality of the Austin Beerworks account, because I feel like it is unique. It's fun, but like, how do you think about it or approach it? And again, I mean this in an
Yeah.
informal way, not like marketing
You
lingo
know,
or anything.
I'm fortunate, really fortunate that, it was me and three other guys that started up the brewery together, and we still all share an office, and we're all still friends, which is kind of amazing. I'm more lucky than anything, but it's just a really great group dynamic. And I always feel super fortunate that they give me that responsibility. They trust me enough to be able to sort of speak for the company. But I think it's changed. I mean, I think that we've all, you spend enough time with somebody and you rub off on each other, that I think that it is the voice of all of us, even though I get to, use the words. I don't know. In general, I mean, I think one early GBF, we came and they had this poster of the four owners that were basically doing all these different things to a unicorn, and somebody was force feeding it hops, and another was like shoveling skittle poop that it was put. I don't know. It was just sort of a silly poster, and somebody from Brooklyn Brewing came up and just looked at it, and we thought, he had a disappointed look on his face, and we're like, oh, Brooklyn Brewery doesn't like us, but he's like, looks like you guys just like to have fun. And we're like, yeah, we really do. And that was always one of our, we don't really take anything seriously except for the beer. And I think that that's sort of the voice that we try to get across, that we're always serious when we're talking about the beers, but we do like to joke and have a good, try to be funny. I don't know. It's sometimes more depends on your sense of humor, I guess. But I think humor is a big part, that we try to interact with people in a funny way. Sometimes a snarky way, but not really, we never want to be mean or arrogant or anything. I think that I guess another specific thing, and that is different probably for some other brands and breweries, is that, we only sell in Austin. So we only really have one city to worry about. So a lot of times our messaging is very specific to, I mean, we're just talking to our region. So we can comment on the weather, or we can comment on a local newscaster or something. It's really sort of locally driven and Austin focused, which I guess is one thing that we can do differently than some other brands.
You also probably, for being so hyper local, you also do a good job of attracting people from Chicago and probably California and all the other big beer cities who have a big group of people active on Twitter, just because of your contributions. Because like I one thing I noticed that I have a lot of respect for is just how you use your Twitter to be what Twitter is built for, which is more conversational. You don't use it the same way I follow you on Instagram too. I'm not very active on Facebook. I just use Facebook pretty much for groups. If I go on Facebook, I like dive right into a group, or I don't use it for whatever reason. But very conversational, and you guys, you're not the only brewery that does this, but there's not a lot, but you'll participate in the conversation of the day sometimes as the brewery, and that's unique and fun and interesting. And that's what kind of, I think, while maybe not your objective, that's kind of building a respect from people way outside of Austin, that when they come to Texas for whatever reason, they're probably going to seek out your beer, just because, if nothing else, is a tip of a cap for all the interactions that you're, like we talked about with Jeremy Danner, you're very accessible and easy to get a reply from.
That's great. And I guess I never really think about it explicitly, but I do think that there's some value and danger for a company profile to sort of have a personality, and to, instead of just purely talking about releases and company information, but to actually interact with people. It's a great thing, but yeah, potentially a dangerous thing too, that it can go, it could definitely go wrong and backfire. So we
there's a line
to walk that line.
Yeah, I was gonna say, there's a line that can cross, and maybe you tiptoe in the vicinity of it, but you never come close to crossing it. I just got to tell a quick story, and I'm going to try to add this as an overlay. But my favorite tweet you've ever done is when you posted a GIF of a girl probably about 6 years old on a balance beam with one of those, like a trampoline park, and she's jousting her friend, and she's hard seltzer, and you
Mm-hmm.
label her other friend as big beer, and she knocks her friend or sister off the balance beam, and then there's this baby crawling along the balance beam, and you label the baby as craft beer, and then she gets the thing and just knocks it right
Yeah,
off. And that was
you
like,
know,
that's my, like, if I was, somebody asked me to say, why do you like the Austin Beerworks Twitter account so much, I would say, well, just look at this one that they did. It was so
well,
simple,
I'm
but
glad that
it was
resonated. And
it was perfect.
yeah,
It
well,
was a
thank
way
you.
of
And
it was a way of joking and making light about the
yeah,
challenges we face, and that they're, we always have these animals that are out there, but keeping
and
it fun.
that probably a sickness of mine in trying to avoid echo chambers, but I really, I'm just in beer stuff all the time and in industry stuff. And so pretty much anything I see from outside, I apply to, it's like, it translates into how is that analogy for what's going on in beer? And so the internet is, an endless source of material for, for GIFs that you can apply to anything, I guess, but with me, it happens to be beer. So, but good. I'm glad, I'm glad you enjoyed.
So since the pandemic has happened, have you had to kind of change it up, or feel like you have to be a little more careful, or anything
I
like that?
think so. I mean, it feels, in March, early March, we had rolled out two new year-round brands. They're Sun Shovel Wheat Beer and Amber Vision Amber Ale, and we had all these. It's been a year really developing those beers, the recipes, and sort of a release concept around them of a bunch of videos that we filmed and a bunch of promotional material that we really wanted to sort of hit people over the head with, and almost to an annoying degree of just more and more just a lot of content. And I felt like we just just kind of axed that. We the lockdowns sort of happened in the middle of our promotion for that we'd released a few of the videos,
Yeah.
but it just didn't feel right to basically to try to sell stuff to people and to advertise, and I don't know, promotion and advertising felt dirty and not the right thing to do. So
Yeah.
that's a direct example. And I think that, you just want to be sensitive to, gosh, and again, like everybody, it's affecting everybody in a different way. And and different people are reading different information and forming different opinions and different ideas about what the right thing to do and the wrong thing to do are. And I think you just have to be sensitive to that. And again, through the company, really not want to sort of take sides on that, other than, I think it's apolitical to say we care about our employees.
Right.
And this is what we think that the right policy for caring about our employees is, versus this is the right thing to do for society. We would never try to take that kind of stance. But yeah, in general, I think it's just sort of trying to be extra sensitive to people's struggles, and and the fact that gosh, there's people have polar opposite opinions about what this means to themselves, to their friends and family, and to society, and just to try to be sensitive about that, I guess, is what I've had on my mind whenever I make any posts.
Yeah, totally agree. It's like there's so many pockets of people affected in different ways. You want to you still want to entertain people who are, told to stay home and have nowhere to go but home. You want to, keep them engaged and entertained as best you can. But then there's so many other people that are affected in a much more serious way, and you want to be empathetic to them as well, and not come off as insensitive. So I think, I don't run our accounts. We never focused on Twitter. It was always our last place we would throw things until, I think it's been coming up on 2 years. We have a guy named John who's incredible, and this guy's just very much like you two. You and him would hit it off. He's built for being a Twitter voice as well, and he's done a great job of making Twitter potentially our primary tool as well. And, he's just trying to, mix in as much, pride, positivity, thankfulness first and foremost, while adding a little bit of humor where it's appropriate. And, this using this Chicago Bulls documentary that's like one of the only things going on TV right
Yeah.
now. Thankfully, we have something like that in our hometown that we can, retweet the Chicago Bulls tweets with a message from us and do things like that. So they can draw a conversation, but wouldn't come off as, insensitive to anyone. So we've had some things like that. Yeah, is there anybody, last thing I wanted to ask you, is there anybody through what's going on, any new voices that have come to light just since this all started that have helped you out? Like, I talked about how the algorithm just kind of throws new people at you that you might not have found otherwise. Is there anybody new you discovered that's helped you through this on Twitter?
Man, like I said, industry specific. Libby has been great.
Yeah.
Just to give just sort of to vocalize pain that that I think a lot of people are feeling, and sort of making it, for me anyways, it sort of justifies the worry and stress that I've been feeling. And it's just nice to hear somebody speak more openly about it and not try to bottle it up. I was thinking about that earlier. I've been following a lot of epidemiologists and medical experts, and I don't know, that am I gonna keep following those people after, are those long-term follows? And I don't know, they're all super interesting, and the information that they're coming out with, is, I think it's interesting, and I try to, follow those.
One I'll give a shout out to while you're thinking, if you have any more. No worries if you don't.
Yeah.
But Julie Verratti,
she's great.
Denizens Brewery in
Mm-hmm.
Maryland. She's affiliated with the Brewers Association and I think the
Right.
Maryland Guild. But
yeah, and she's a background in SBA, in the SBA, right?
Exactly, perfect. Yeah. So she had a huge effect on me with her being so outspoken about the PPP loans, whereas, I kind of approached this with which the wrong, I will admit, is the wrong way, which was like, I'll take anything we can get. But I wasn't expecting anything, so whatever they come out with, great. Where she was like, at the front line saying, this is not enough, this is not enough. And sure enough, it wasn't enough. And they doubled, the amounts just for the PPP loans.
Yeah, that was great.
Thanks to people like her, fighting. And that was like, yeah, I need to adopt more of that attitude instead of just like, I'll take what I can get. I'm not expecting much like that. If you won't get it until you fight for it. And thankfully, people like her who have that kind of experience, that rubbed off on me in a big way. So big shout out to her.
Yeah, she's super sharp. That reminded me of Colin McDonald, who's on the other coast, but who's at Hen House. He's a super sharp guy, and he's one of those guys that he articulates things that I feel really often, in a smart way, or crystallizes something that a vague feeling that I had. It's like, that's right, that's exactly how I feel. He's really good at that. So I like those two people have been I'm very impressed by their knowledge and experience and just ability to communicate ideas.
Yeah, Colin was the other one I was going to mention myself. He added a lot of good perspective from restaurant owners, which he's similar to you. He self-distributes, but he also has a distribution arm of his company in Petaluma where he distributes other brands as well. So he's like yourself, I'm sure, has a lot of experience just talking with and understanding the dynamics of the different restaurants in his town, and just kind of explaining that, anybody who says like, well, shouldn't these restaurants have a nest egg to fall back on and things like that? And it's like, no. And he did a really good job of articulating that a lot of people that own restaurants, that's their first ever business and they're all in. All the chips are on the table. There's not this big nest egg to fall back from. A lot of these people risked it all and put it all on the table, and that's who needs these. So it was both around PPP loans and just around the situation in general of like helping me think about restaurants from that angle too, of that it's not, you know, sometimes I think of like who we sell a lot of beer to, which is like a massive restaurant group, and they have
Right.
tons of employees that are affected by this, they're affected by this as well. But trying to not just think about those big giant groups, but also these, you know, small one-offs that are just like a, you know, one location restaurant, and how a whole family is on the line there. Their you know, finances are on the line. So.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, they've done a good job of providing context to the depth and nature of the problem, which is good. I think, like you said, the more that I think that's a responsible way to use the platform is actually to use it as a megaphone to you know, to try to promote positive change. I think they've done a good job. I think Julie's representative, I think, actually read her letter on the House floor, like of what she recommended to do. It was cool to see.
That's awesome. Well, yeah. Michael, are you ready for the lightning round?
Yeah, I think so. So this is just straight lightning round answers. No, I don't have to justify anything. I'll just It's like a Rorschach test. All right.
No, I hate to say one-word answers because it can be a couple words, but you don't have to give like descriptive sentences. So the goal is to see just how many fair answers you can get out in 2 minutes. And so the clock will start when I finish the first question. And the first question is a guest submission from Bart Watson, the chief economist of the BA. What's one change you've made at your brewery over the past month that you still think you'll be doing 2 years from now?
Online ordering.
What's the first handle or name that comes to mind when I say beer Twitter?
Oh gosh, Katzenbrow. I hate to say it, but that's the first thing that came to mind.
Who has been your best source of advice since the pandemic started?
My dad.
What's the most important law change Texas breweries need now?
Direct delivery to consumer.
Predict the next style of beer you'll can that's never been in a can before.
That's never been in a can before. Oh God. We're doing a fruited sour.
Cool. Yep. Estimate the month and year that Austin Beerworks will start using its TikTok account.
The account's reserved. I have it locked down. So maybe, depends how bored I am. I'm going to say, I'm going to say May. I think it's coming.
Oh, wow. What brewery do you get inspiration from via social media?
Social media. Solemn Oath I've been talking to a lot lately. Yeah.
Great people. Name something that you feel Austin Beerworks leads in Texas.
Texas. Canned beer. I think we were one of the first advocates for canned beer.
What Austin Beerworks beer doesn't get the love it deserves?
Gosh, all of them. But I'd say Flavor Country, which is one of our newer year rounds. It's a pale ale, which people just aren't excited about as IPAs, but it's great.
Name an imported beer that served as a point of inspiration for a beer you've made.
Imported. Gosh, Kostritzer, I guess we inspired us to make a Schwartz beer as one of our original beers.
Cool. Name a Twitter feature that you'd like to see.
Edits. I wish you could edit your,
that was a softball.
Yeah.
On the sales end of your role, what tool or system is most crucial to your day-to-day?
Honestly, probably Google Apps, sharing spreadsheets and things.
We're out of time.
All right.
Well, you did great. Michael, thanks for coming on. Yeah. This was fun.
My pleasure.
Thanks for fun to talk a little beer Twitter,
Yeah, thanks for inviting me and just for taking the time and effort to do these things. I think it's, I don't know, it's good.
Still figuring it out, but we'll get there. So thanks for being one of my early guinea pigs.
My pleasure, man. Well, I hope we get to actually see each other in person and, have
Can't
a
be
beer
soon enough.
sometime. I know. All right. Well, say hello to everybody in Chicago for me.
All right. Thanks, Michael.